Welcome back to Reminiscing. This is part two of a conversation I had with AI professor at Northwestern University, Dr. David Zaretsky. And we encourage you to listen to part one for more context on AI and education. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and continue the conversation at Reminiscing.
In all of my classes, I tell my students, like the first day, there's two things you need to succeed in this world today. One is critical thinking. The other is you have to be intellectually curious. If you are not willing to step out of your comfort zone and see what else is out there and explore, and you're going to fall behind very quickly, right? This past week or so, there's been this huge thing all over the internet on this tool called Clawbot. If you've come across this.
Yeah.
So basically, people are running these on their Mac Minis, right? You just install the Clawbot, and you give them access to all the APIs and stuff, and it can start running your company for you. Set all these different skills and stuff. It can learn and start running. And people are deploying this to run their businesses, all these different agents and stuff to optimize. So, I mean, it just shows you how quickly things progress. And you're going to have a lot more tools like that become, this is at home and stuff, but you'll have enterprise versions of this where you can run agents, the simple things like, do posts for me on LinkedIn, or, create some content for me for YouTube and stuff, and push that out. Save you a lot of time and help you gain traction and stuff. But if without those critical thinking skills, without the being intellectually curious, you're not going to be able to run the company. The agents are not going to. There was a podcast I had watched a while ago. This guy was basically setting up all these agents to run a business, and just woke up the next day and they're all just chatting, and they didn't do anything because there was no direction. There was just go figure it out, and you need that somebody orchestrating it. So
absolutely that orchestration layer
yeah
is the person, as the human in the loop, so to speak, right?
And you can't, where does that come from? And I think it really stems from the human experience. You can have an AI come up with ideas to start a company, but what it doesn't have is that life experience, a human experience. So it doesn't know what problems to solve until you say, hey, I was I was on a podcast, and I had this great conversation, and my mind started thinking about this problem I had, and now I want to go solve it, right? The AI can't do that because it didn't live that experience.
Absolutely.
And so you do still need a human in the loop to understand like where the problems are, what problems will be coming up in the future, and right. So I think that's still gives us a lot of hope that we're not fully
being replaced,
right?
But one of the things I've read recently is how AGI is now possible, right? Artificial general intelligence, and how that is going to, run the services and products and this, that, and the other, and going to displace people. And then there's some futurists that's speaking about 99% unemployment. I mean, all of this, but you take a step back. If there's no one employed, who is actually buying these products and services that are being created?
Right.
What's the economic model for that?
Yeah.
Which that's insane.
I think humanity is interwoven into the universe. You can't just disconnect the human from everything, right? I think it's a very foolish way to think about. Everybody's just going to be sort of disappear and not work, and there's always innovation, there's always things happening. The analogy I like to bring is did you see the Wicked movie? Okay, so if you saw the Wicked in the theater, like on the play, versus the one in the theater had all the special effects, and it was great, and it was this whole other experience. But when you go to the theater and you see it's a one take, right? all these people have practiced and they're singing live without microphones, without all the special effects. It's all done manually with levers and stuff. There's this authenticity when you go to a Broadway show that you can't get in the theater. That for me, I'm what would you call it, an audiophilist, right? I love vinyl records and I love collecting old vinyl and stuff. You can listen to Spotify, but it doesn't have that analog, pure audio. And so I think there's still going to be a place in the world for, you're going to have these digital automations, and then you'll have companies where it's like, people are still, building art from hand, by hand. They're still doing things, and people will pay a premium for that human experience.
Absolutely.
So I that has never changed, with all this Hollywood effects and stuff. You're seeing a decline in movie-going experience, partially because people can see it at home or they wait to it, but Broadway is still, try to get tickets for a Broadway show. It's hard, right? They're always selling out, and people are making good money in that industry. So I think that there's still something to be said about that analog, authentic experience.
Yeah, the authentic experience will be at a premium as we continue to evolve this AI world that we're in. But I always say, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it.
Right.
And look at the broader impacts and understanding where to leverage it. Like we talk about AI in education, where to leverage it best, how to structure it better, and looking for a specific outcome from it, not just use it and be like, oops, I didn't think this was going to happen.
Right.
Kind of like you said, you're a futurist. You're looking in the future on how things are going to transpire. If I do X, will Y happen? Or what do I need to do to prevent that Y from happening if it's not something good?
Yeah.
Right. So it's those things we have to take a look at as well. So
yeah, that's always been the Silicon Valley model is break it and then apologize later. Yeah. And that's where a lot of innovation comes from, is just push things as far as they can go until somebody says stop. Laws take a long time to pass. That's one of the the interesting things we talk about in the course that you spoke in about ethics. Ethics is always forward-looking, where legal is always backwards-looking. So legal, you have a framework, and ethics, you're always thinking, should I be doing this?
Absolutely.
And what are the consequences? And so that takes a lot more critical thinking, because the engineer or the entrepreneur's sort of mindset is push it as fast, as quick as we can do it, be the first ones, without stopping to think about should I actually do this or not. And I think that that passion for innovation is always at odds end with the ethical implications, and that's where you're going to run into this AGI. How quickly are we going to get to AGI? I don't know. I'm always thinking it's 5 years out. I'm pessimistically optimistic.
Yeah, it's in some cases I hear it's already here. Some cases people saying it's 3 to 5 years out, and other people say we have a form of it now. What exactly is happening? But at the end of the day, I believe if you are intentional about integrating ethics and governance in your development of AI, it's not something like the old model, like you said, you push it out there and then you kind of fix it later. The toothpaste is already out of the tube, right? So how you need to bake ethics into what you're doing before the product is released.
Sure.
And as we see, once the product is released and it's has some data ethics issues or just the processing ethics issues, it comes back to a point where it can have a situation where the company is so affected by it that the company is no longer in existence, because it's too many lawsuits and things like that, and no one trusts the product,
right.
So people stop purchasing it. it can be the death of an organization if you don't do this, if you don't integrate that within your technology. So it's those things we have to make these companies aware of.
Right. In engineering, we always say when you're building a product, security is not a feature. It's you design with security in mind, right? From the get-go. Everything's already designed to be encrypted, and you have passwords, and right. Same thing with ethics. Ethics can't be a feature anymore. It has to be designed in there. They lowered the guardrails for a lot of these LLMs. A couple of weeks ago, you had Pete Hegseth was in. Where was this? They had the big AI.
Is it Davos? No.
I'm trying to remember, but he was out there with Elon Musk, and he was announcing all the new military and DoD and all the stuff that they're doing with AI and stuff. And one of the things that they were talking about was we're not going to be using any sort of AI that has certain guardrails in place because in the military, there's a whole ethical conversation around should you be using AI in the military anyway, but if you had certain guardrails in there that would prevent the AI from taking certain actions that could be problematic. So naturally, they're either retraining models for specific military use, or these contractors like Google or OpenAI, whoever they're using, wouldn't have to have certain models where they lower the guardrails. And we've seen kind of what happens when there's there was a few incidences where kids have committed suicide because the guardrails were reduced allegedly, and so there's a lot of considerations where now if those guardrails are reduced and I build my technology on top of an LLM that doesn't have that, it's not that I can't be relying 100% on OpenAI to have all the check boxes in there. I have to build my applications with my own guardrails in place.
But you also have to look at the application, right? If it's a military application, there's certain things that you don't want as far as guardrails, but certain things you do, especially if you are going down the path of autonomous weapons, and you run the risk of the AI taking over, launching things that you should not launch at a time you should not launch it if it's not a human in the loop.
Right.
And so there's certain other guardrails that you got to make sure you have in place. But that same technology, if it's used in everyday life, or somebody is working with it with kids, there's a different set of guardrails that you need to make sure are in there. So it's really depends on the application of the AI that you're using, what guardrails you need to have in place. And that's to me, that's common sense.
Right. Granted, I don't think that they're using it to launch weapons, but I think what they're probably using it for would be assessments of taking all the data and distilling it down and coming up with assessments on what is the chances of X, Y, or Z happening, and
Yeah, well, they back in the day when that movie War Games, when you had the simulation,
right?
And there's no really real winner. So it's a lot of different aspects of AI that could be really useful and pertinent within the military and what they specifically want to do. And then there's AI and for the general public, AI for organizations. And so if you, like you said, you have to develop it with the ethics in mind, security, like you do have the security in mind. Those are the things that you need to develop it with in mind as part of your requirements, testing, training, the whole nine.
Yeah.
When you do that.
Anything that touches a human, I would always consider, do you have guardrails about, can somebody ask a question that it's not designed for?
Right.
If you're building a gaming chat bot or something, right? Somebody asks about drugs or suicide or something like that. Those should be topics that should be off limits, and then you redirect or so on, right?
Right.
So people have found ways of getting around it, and even games right now, where Roblox and stuff. There's a lot of parents who are removing Roblox now from their kids' iPads because of all the scary stuff that goes on with that. And, so you got to be vigilant as a parent. You got to be vigilant as an entrepreneur.
Exactly.
Don't take anything for granted that it's designed with all the safety precautions. You got to build it in yourself.
Yeah, I want to get your opinion on this. The large language models, AI has been very good at developing code, whether it's Python, C#, whatever. What is your belief on just letting the AI develop the code and just installing it? I think there should be steps like any other software development, effort.
Yeah. I come from my background is in compilers, and compilers. The idea is taking high level languages and compiling down to executable code. And I look at LLMs as being the new generation of compilers, basically take an idea and distilling it down to code, which then gets executed. And now the LLMs also have the ability to not just create the code, but execute it, run it. You give it access to your computer, to your email, and it can go, rain havoc.
Right.
I think that's why, one of the big, hurdles with this Clawbot that everyone's talking about now, this application, is that you're giving it access to do anything. and it could send out emails on your behalf. It could, could be quite catastrophic if it publishes something or erases all your files, or what if somebody hacks it and from the outside sends an email and the LLM responds back and sends all of your information to it, sends your passwords. Right. So there could be a lot of, even beyond just installing code or running it. It could very easily do its own thing, and even using your AI chatbot as a host, as a co-host, listening in when you tell it not to talk, and it still will operate and do its own thing. Is a very simplistic example of how it doesn't follow all the directions that you're given
all the time.
Right.
So yeah, and so that's my angst. I mean, I'm kind of like I would use a model to generate code. I wouldn't install it until I reviewed it. Yeah. Until I tested it. You don't just write. I never wrote any code and just installed it.
Right. You would.
We always tested it. From basic unit tests to string testing to integration testing. All those levels of testing. Yeah. And then it's you do red teaming and really hack at it, throw data that it shouldn't, see how it responds. All those things are important before so what you have before you release it. Right. And people are not doing that because I see folks that are really not versed in programming and developing systems, just letting, like you said, giving the code access to different systems without first testing all of this first. Right. And I think that's a miss.
Yeah, most of these tools like Visual Studio Code and what's the other one that I use, Windsurf, they don't really handle large context windows all that well. So what ends up happening is you say, write me some code or fix this code, and what it ends up doing is changing a lot of stuff because it doesn't have doesn't contain the full context. And so what ends up happening is you think you have like a perfectly written code, it starts rewriting everything. And so you got to keep your files, was one of the tricks of the trade. You got to keep your files pretty low and pretty small and being more modular. And, but it could have inadvertent effects if you just have the LM just start editing everything. It could insert some garbage in there that breaks, and you got to have the unit tests. You have to have a process for developing code, for testing, for pushing it out. And but who's going to do that? Somebody with hopefully the critical thinking skills.
Here we go. Here we go back to that.
Yeah.
And you know, we're old school, so this is stuff we do, and I call it software development 101. This is stuff we do. And it's like, have we forgotten this? Or people just say, you know, this current generation, they say, well, the AI is going to do it for me. Nah, you got to make sure that AI understands what you want it to do. So it's those concerns, you know, that bother me, you know. So I know we covered a lot, you know. So what else? Let's talk about the things you're doing. Let's get into
running lots of
Dr. Zaretsky and understand you know, the things that you're doing, because I've always found you to be a very fascinating, interesting person, very understanding of the trends and someone that has a great perspective.
Yeah.
Because every time I'm speaking in your courses, we have conversations, and the students then benefit, and the students jump in. So let's talk about more what you're doing. So.
Well, I'm always innovating. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking 10 more things. So, you know, I often struggle with balancing life and innovating, because there's always something that I get really, you know, interested in, and I want to, you know, attack it. So I have, you know, right now I'm working with a bunch of different students doing research and, you know, testing different ideas and so on. But, you know, my classes I'm always updating them. So I have that. I'm trying to improve our master's program. We're trying to create new opportunities for students, trying to help them get jobs. And a lot of that comes down to rethinking the role of a master's program for students, you know, making sure that there's, you know, opportunities for them.
Right.
So my courses are often evolved around, like, how do I market myself, get the best skill sets and things like that. So most of my day is spent, you know, working with students. I teach probably twice a week, but then I spend the next 4 days meeting with students, guiding them, whether it's on research or projects or things like that. I have students who are becoming entrepreneurs, so I'm working with them. And then I have, you know, my companies on the side that I'm working on, which all have elements of AI and so on. I do work in consulting. A lot of it also is in AI. So I keep myself pretty busy trying to innovate and, you know, the things that are sort of in the entrepreneurial space that I'm working on are still sort of under the radar right now while I'm still working on it. But there's inevitably what I'm finding is, you know, I start going down a path, and then there's like 20 new things that come out, and you're like, oh, I gotta look at these things. All the AI, everything changes so rapidly. So right. You know, staying afloat, that's the big challenge, but it's also one of my big passions. So my next big project right now is launching my own podcast. You know, and being able to just have these conversations. It forces you to be up to date on what's going on.
Absolutely.
And having these conversations, I think, are really important. And so those are some of the big things on my agenda right now. But you'll be hearing about some of my launches fairly soon.
Hey, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And also looking forward to the next time I'm come to Northwestern and to converse with you and your students. So that's always open for you to do that. Just, you know, give me a call or shoot me an email, whatever, and you know, and we can make it happen.
Yeah, you're always on the top list of things. That part of the AI ethics part and the legal have really become more and more so more interesting and pivotal parts of those courses, because that's, you know, I think that's where students lack. You know, engineers, they can always pick up new skill sets, but nobody teaches them the ethical or the legal components, ramifications of their work. And so I've been stressing that more and more in these recently, and so I really enjoy that part of the conversation.
Fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank you, David. Really appreciate your time and your willingness to come speak to me today on the podcast. I want to return the favor to you when you launch yours. I'm definitely looking forward to that. And, we go from there.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time, my man.
Great to be here.
All right. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and share, because we will be diving into AI, past, present, and the possible future soon.